The observation deck stretched wide across the Galactic Council station, its transparent walls offering a perfect view of the blue and green planet below. Velthar pressed two of his four hands against the cool surface, his compound eyes studying Earth with curiosity. He had arrived only hours ago, carrying orders from the Vryn Empire to observe and document human military capabilities. The assignment puzzled him. Humans were newcomers to the galaxy, barely 2 centuries beyond their first crewed spacecraft. What could possibly make them worthy of special attention? Beautiful, isn't it? A voice came from behind him. Velthar turned to see a human male, in a dark uniform approaching. The human was small by galactic standards, perhaps 6 feet tall, with short black hair and eyes that seemed to calculate everything they saw. "I'm Colonel Kai-1, Earth Defense Force. I'll be your primary contact during your stay." Velthar performed the formal Vryn greeting, touching his antenna tips together. "I am Junior Attaché, Velthar, of the Vryn Empire. I appreciate your cooperation with this assessment." Kai-1 smiled slightly. "Assessment? That's a diplomatic word for it." He gestured toward the viewing port. "Your empire wants to know if the rumors are true, if humans are really as dangerous as the stories say." Before Velthar could respond, another human joined them. This one was female, slightly shorter than Kai-1, with long dark hair tied back efficiently. She wore a similar uniform, but with different insignia. "This is Hana," Kai-1 said. "She's our military liaison for foreign observers. She'll make sure you see everything you need to see." Hana extended her hand in the human greeting gesture. Velthar had studied human customs and carefully took her hand, mimicking the shaking motion. Her grip was surprisingly firm for such a small creature. "Welcome to our little corner of space," she said. "I hope your stay is enlightening." Over the next few days, Velthar accompanied Kai-1 and Hana through various human military facilities. He watched training exercises where human soldiers ran until they collapsed, their bodies drenched in sweat. He observed their weapons demonstrations, noting that human firearms were less sophisticated than Vryn plasma rifles. He recorded everything in his personal datapad, building a case that would surely prove the human reputation was nothing more than exaggerated propaganda. The humans tired quickly, needing 8 hours of sleep each night. They required constant hydration and multiple meals throughout the day. Their skin was soft, easily damaged by extremes of temperature. They had no natural armor, no venomous defenses, no enhanced senses. Velthar's reports back to his superiors emphasized these weaknesses. "The human form is fragile," he dictated one evening. "They compensate with technology, but remove their machines, and they are vulnerable prey animals." Then the news arrived that changed everything. Velthar was reviewing training footage when alarms sounded throughout the station. Human personnel moved with sudden urgency, their casual demeanor vanishing in seconds. Kai-1 found him in the observation room, his expression grim. "We need to move you to a secure location. The Calthrine Dominion has issued an ultimatum." "The Calthrine?" Velthar's antenna twitched in surprise. The Calthrine Dominion controlled 70 star systems and commanded one of the largest military fleets in the galaxy. "What do they want?" 2. Hana appeared in the doorway, already wearing combat gear. "They want 3 of our colony worlds: Nueva Colombia, New Sol, and Terra Nova. They've given us 72 hours to evacuate, or they'll take them by force." Velthar felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. "But those worlds have millions of human colonists. Surely your government will negotiate?" Kai-1's expression hardened. "Negotiate? We tried that 6 months ago, when they started encroaching on our border. They don't want negotiation, Velthar. They want submission." He turned to leave, then paused. "You wanted to see human military capabilities. I guess you're about to get a front row seat." The next morning, Velthar observed a meeting of human military command. Fleet Admiral G1 stood before a holographic display showing the 3 contested worlds and the surrounding space. Around the table sat various human officers, their faces serious. There was no panic, no angry outbursts. They spoke in calm, measured tones about fleet positions, supply lines, and civilian evacuation schedules. The Calthrine are sending their third battle fleet, G1 said, highlighting a portion of the hologram. Intelligence estimates 400 to 500 warships. We can field maybe 120 ships in that sector within the 72-hour window. One of the officers spoke up. Those numbers are not in our favor, Admiral. G1 nodded. No, they're not. But the numbers never are. She looked around the table, meeting each officer's eyes. We're not going to evacuate those worlds. 12 million people call them home. They built lives there. We don't abandon our people. Velthar felt compelled to speak. Forgive my interruption, but the mathematics seem clear. You cannot win against such odds. The room fell silent. Hana, standing near the wall, spoke quietly. Winning isn't the same as fighting. Attaché. The Calthrine think we'll run because the numbers don't favor us. But they don't understand something important about humans. What's that? Velthar asked. Kaiwan answered, his voice carrying a weight that made Velthar's antenna flatten involuntarily. We've never let bad odds stop us before, and we've faced worse than the Calthrine. As the meeting concluded and the officers filed out, Velthar remained seated, processing what he had witnessed. There was something in the way these humans carried themselves, something he couldn't quite identify. It wasn't bravado or foolish confidence. It was something older, something colder. For the first time since arriving at Earth, Velthar wondered if perhaps the stories about humanity weren't exaggerated at all. Perhaps they weren't exaggerated enough. The transport shuttle descended through Mars's thin atmosphere, carrying Velthar and his escorts to the massive military complex sprawling across the Red Desert. From above, he could see thousands of human soldiers moving in organized formations, vehicles being loaded onto massive cargo ships, and supply depots working at maximum capacity. The entire human military machine was mobilizing, and Velthar was there to observe every detail. Master Sergeant Deho met them at the landing pad. He was older than Kiwan, with gray streaking through his black hair and scars visible on his weathered face. His uniform bore numerous insignia that Velthar didn't recognize, but the other humans seemed to regard him with deep respect. Welcome to Forward Base Olympus, Deho said, his voice rough but not unkind. I run combat training here. Colonel Kai Wan asked me to show you how we prepare our soldiers. Over the next day, Velthar followed Deho through the base, expecting to see weapons drills and tactical simulations. Instead, he witnessed something that confused him deeply. Soldiers sat in quiet rooms, writing on paper with old-fashioned pens. Others recorded holographic messages, speaking to people who weren't there. Some simply stared at photographs, their eyes distant. What are they doing? Velthar finally asked. Shouldn't they be training? The deadline is approaching. Deho looked at the nearest soldier, a young woman carefully folding a letter. They are preparing, attaché. Just not in the way you might expect. He gestured for Velthar to follow him. Let me show you something. They entered a large hall where hundreds of soldiers gathered. The room was quiet despite the crowd. Deho explained that each soldier was being given time to contact their families, to arrange their affairs, to say things that needed to be said. We call it the protocol of goodbyes, he said. Every human soldier goes through it before deployment. Lansen. But this is just a border conflict, Velthar protested. The Galactic Council rates it as a minor territorial dispute. Surely you don't expect significant casualties? Deho's expression grew dark. We expect every casualty to be significant. Attaché. That's the difference. He pointed to a young man, embracing an older couple through a holographic display. That's Private Taman. He's 20 years old. Those are his parents. He's telling them he loves them, just in case. Just in case of what? In case he doesn't come back. The words sent a chill through Velthar. He had studied dozens of species' military protocols. None of them included what appeared to be mass preparation for death before even reaching the battlefield. This seems Counterproductive. You're destroying morale before the fight begins. Are we? Daeho led him to another area where soldiers were checking equipment with meticulous care. These soldiers know exactly what they're walking into. They've made peace with it. They've said their goodbyes. Now they can fight without hesitation, without distraction, without fear of leaving things unsaid. He paused. We're not preparing our weapons, attaché. We're preparing ourselves. Later, Velthar was transported to Europa Station, where Fleet Admiral G1 was assembling the defensive fleet. The massive space station orbited Jupiter's ice-covered moon, and through the viewports, Velthar could see warships gathering like predators preparing to hunt. The Admiral had agreed to let him observe the pre-deployment briefing. The crew members filed into the briefing hall, thousands of them representing every ship in the fleet. They were young and old, male and female, their faces showing every shade of human skin tone. They stood in perfect silence, waiting. Admiral G1 stepped onto the raised platform, and her image was projected large enough for everyone to see. 72 hours ago, the Kalthrine Dominion told us to abandon our homes or be destroyed, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. They think we'll run. They think the numbers favor them too heavily. They think we're just another small species that will bend to their will. She paused, and Velthar noticed she wasn't smiling. There was no fierce battle cry, no promise of glorious victory. Instead, her expression was almost sad. I won't lie to you. The odds are against us. Many of you won't come home. Some of your ships will be destroyed. Some of you will die in the cold vacuum of space, far from Earth, far from the people you love. The hall remained silent. Velthar expected outrage, or fear, or at least some sign of dissent. Instead, the humans simply listened. I can't promise you victory, G1 continued. I can't promise you'll survive. All I can promise is that if we don't fight, 12 million people on those 3 worlds will be enslaved or killed. Your brothers, your sisters, your children. The Kalthrine won't stop with 3 worlds. They'll take more, then more, until there's nothing left of humanity but memories. She looked across the assembled crew, and her voice grew firm. So I'm asking you to fight. Not for glory, not for honor, not for some abstract ideal. I'm asking you to fight because someone has to, and we're the ones who can. I'm asking you to be willing to pay the price that freedom demands. Then something happened that Velthar would remember for the rest of his life. One by one, every single human in that hall raised their hand, not in a formal salute, but in a simple gesture of agreement, thousands of hands rising in silent acknowledgement. They were volunteering, every last one of them, even after being told many would die. Thank you, G1 said quietly. Dismissed. Say your goodbyes. We deploy in 48 hours. As the crew filed out, Velthar stood frozen in place. Hana approached him, noticing his distress. Are you all right, attaché? I don't understand, Velthar managed to say. Your admiral just told them they would die. Why did they accept? Hana looked toward the viewport where Earth was visible as a blue dot in the distance. Because the alternative is worse. Because someone they love is on one of those worlds. Because humans learned a long time ago that some things are worth dying for. She turned back to him. You still don't see it. Do you? You came here thinking we were just another species with guns and ships. But we're not. Then what are you? We're the species that learned how to say goodbye, Hana said softly. And that makes us the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. The human carrier, Indomitable, was the largest warship Velthar had ever seen inside. Its corridors stretched for miles, connecting weapon bays, crew quarters, hangar decks, and command centers. The ship hummed with activity as it traveled through hyperspace toward the contested border. Velthar had been given quarters near the observation deck and permission to move freely throughout the ship. The humans wanted him to see everything. He spent his days watching the crew prepare. Engineers checked and rechecked every system. Pilots ran simulation after simulation. Medical teams set up emergency surgical facilities. Everyone moved with purpose. But there was something else beneath the surface. An intensity that Velthar couldn't quite name. These humans weren't excited or eager. They were focused in a way that seemed almost mechanical. On the third day of travel, Velthar found Kai-1 in the ship's command center, reviewing tactical displays. The colonel looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes. "Attaché," he acknowledged without looking away from the screens. "Learning anything useful?" "I'm learning that I don't understand," Velthar admitted. "Your people behave as though every battle is the end of everything." The Galactic Council's military analysts classify this conflict as minor. A few ships, limited objectives. Yet you treat it like extinction threatens you. Kai-1 finally turned to face him. "Can I show you something?" He led Velthar to a secure archive room deep within the ship. The walls were lined with data storage units, and in the center was a holographic display system. Kai-1 activated it, and images began to appear. Ruined cities, burned landscapes, massive craters where populations once lived, bodies stacked like refuse, images that made Velthar's stomach turn. "What are these?" Velthar whispered. "This is human history," Kai-1 said flatly. "This is what we do to each other." He changed the images, showing armies facing each other across muddy fields, primitive weapons firing chemical explosives. "This is what we call World War I. 40 million dead. We fought it with machine guns and poison gas in trenches full of disease." The images shifted again. Cities consumed by fire from the sky. A mushroom cloud rising above a coastal city. World War II. 80 million dead. We invented nuclear weapons and used them. Twice. On ourselves. Kiwan's voice was steady but cold. "We built bombs that could kill entire cities in seconds. Then, we built more bombs. Bigger bombs. We made enough nuclear weapons to destroy all life on Earth 50 times over." Velthar stared at the images, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. "But these are primitive weapons. Your species was barely advanced. Surely once you reached space, once you met other species." "You don't get it," Kiwan interrupted. He pulled up more data, showing weapon schematics and military documents. "Every weapon system we have, every tactic, every strategy we use was designed to kill other humans. We spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of murdering our own kind. The galaxy's conflicts?" He laughed bitterly. "They're gentle compared to what humans do when we really want someone dead." Medical Officer Young-Sik entered the archive room, carrying a data tablet. He was younger than Kai-1, with kind eyes that seemed out of place on a warship. "Colonel, you asked for the comparative studies." He noticed Velthar and nodded in greeting. "Attaché, show him," Kiwan said. Young-Sik projected a series of charts. "These are mortality rates for major galactic conflicts over the past 500 years. Wars between the Calthrine and the Vex Commonwealth. The Thorian expansion wars. The Zephyr Rebellion." He highlighted numbers. Average casualty rates range from 3 to 8%. Most galactic warfare focuses on territorial control, with minimal loss of life. He switched to another chart. "These are human conflicts. World War II had a casualty rate of nearly 30% of all combatants. Some human battles had mortality rates exceeding 90%. We didn't fight to control territory. We fought to eliminate enemies completely." Velthar felt sick. "Why? Why would you do this to yourselves?" "Because we didn't know any other way," Kiwan said. "We evolved alone on a world with limited resources. For millions of years, we competed with each other, fought each other, killed each other. It's written into our DNA. We're persistence hunters, attaché. We chase our prey until it dies of exhaustion. And for most of our history, our prey was other humans." Young-Sik added gently, "We're the only species in the galaxy that invented the concept of mutually assured destruction." We built weapons we knew would kill us if we used them, and we built them anyway because we wanted to guarantee that if we died, our enemies would die too. That's how humans think about war. The door opened, and fighter pilot Yunji walked in, still wearing her flight suit. She was small, even by human standards, but her eyes were sharp and alert. "Colonel, you wanted me?" Kai-Wan gestured to Velthar. "Tell him about your training." Yunji looked at the alien observer curiously. "My training? What about it?" "Tell him what you learned in the academy. What every human pilot learns." She shrugged. "Standard stuff. Flight mechanics, weapon systems, emergency procedures, and the sacrifice protocols." "Explain the sacrifice protocols," Ki-Wan said. "Oh, those." Yunji spoke casually, as if discussing the weather. "If we're out of ammunition and can't retreat, we're trained to use our fighter as a weapon, accelerate to maximum velocity, and ram enemy ships. The impact usually destroys both vessels. But it takes an enemy ship out of the fight." Velthar's antenna went rigid. "You're trained to kill yourselves?" "We're trained to complete the mission by any means necessary," Yunji corrected. "We have ejection systems. Sometimes they work. But even if they don't, one fighter can take out a capital ship if the pilot commits fully. It's mathematics." Engineering Chief Hyun-woo arrived next, a broad-shouldered man with grease stains on his uniform. Kai-Wan had apparently gathered these people deliberately. "Tell the attaché about contingency plan, Omega," the colonel ordered. Hyun-woo grimaced. "That's classified, sir. He has clearance. Tell him." "Fine." Hyun-woo looked at Velthar. "If we're losing badly, we have protocols to convert our cargo ships into massive explosives. We load them with antimatter, set them on autopilot, and detonate them in the middle of enemy formations. Takes out everything in a 50-kilometer radius. You sacrifice your own ships?" "Empty ships," Hyun-woo clarified. "We evacuate the crews first when possible. But yes, we'll destroy our own assets to take the enemy with us. It's not about winning, attaché. It's about making victory so costly that the enemy wishes they never started the fight." Velthar looked around at these humans, these small, fragile creatures who spoke so calmly about death and destruction. "You're all insane." "Maybe," Ki-Wan said. "Or maybe we just understand something the rest of the galaxy doesn't. We know what we're capable of. We've seen what happens when humans really commit to war, and we're terrified of ourselves. Then why fight at all?" "Because we also know what happens when good people do nothing," Ki-Wan replied. "We spent centuries learning that lesson. We watched genocides happen while others looked away. We saw evil triumph because decent people were too afraid to act. So now we act. We fight. Not because we want to, but because we remember what happens when we don't." The truth settled over Velthar like a heavy weight. These humans weren't dangerous despite their weakness. They were dangerous because they knew their weakness and had learned to weaponize everything, including their own lives. They had stared into the darkness of their own nature and emerged willing to do whatever necessary to protect others from that same darkness. "When the battle comes," Velthar asked quietly, "what will I see?" Kai-Wan's expression was grim. "You'll see why the galaxy fears us." The Indomitable dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Titan's Gate sector, and Velthar felt his heart skip a beat. Through the observation deck's massive viewport, he could see the Calthrine fleet waiting. Ships stretched across the starfield like a vast metal ocean. Hundreds of them, their hulls dark and menacing, weapons already glowing with charged energy. Behind them, barely visible, were the 3 human colony worlds the Calthrine had claimed. Fleet composition confirmed. A human officer reported from the command deck below. 487 Calthrine warships, 32 capital ships, 112 cruisers. The rest, destroyers, and support vessels. Admiral Ji-Wan stood at the center of the command deck, her hands clasped behind her back. "How many ships do we have?" 119, Admiral. and the supply convoy makes 23 more. Velthar did the mathematics in his head. 4-to-1 odds. No reasonable military commander would engage. The Galactic Council had sent observers from 6 other species to watch the battle, and through his communicator, Velthar could hear their commentary. They all expected the humans to withdraw. The Calthrine are hailing us. The communications officer announced. Put it through, G1 ordered. A holographic projection appeared, showing a Calthrine commander. The insectoid being was twice the size of any human, with armored carapace and mandibles that clicked as it spoke. Human fleet, this is Commander Thexkal of the Calthrine 3rd Battle Fleet. You are ordered to withdraw immediately or be destroyed. You have 1 cycle to comply. G1's response was calm. Commander, those worlds belong to humanity. 12 million human citizens live there. We will not abandon them. Then you will die with them, Thexkal replied. You are outnumbered 4-to-1. This is suicide. We've survived worse odds, G1 said. Final warning, Commander. Leave this sector now, or we will remove you. The Calthrine commander made a sound that might have been laughter. Brave words from a species of children. Very well. Let the galaxy witness your destruction. The communication cut off. Velthar felt panic rising. He rushed to the command deck, finding Kiwan at a tactical station. Colonel, this is insane. You have to retreat. Those numbers are impossible. Kaiwan glanced at him briefly. You still don't understand. We're not here to win, attaché. We're here to teach. He turned back to his console. All ships, this is command. Activate protocol, Scorched Earth. Authorization, G1, Alpha 77. Across the human fleet, ships began to move. But not in retreat. They advanced toward the Calthrine line, in a formation Velthar didn't recognize. The supply ships moved to the front, while the warships spread out in a wide semicircle. Calthrine fleet is advancing, sensors reported. They're preparing to fire. Let them come, G1 said quietly. The battle began with a fury that took Velthar's breath away. The Calthrine ships opened fire. Streams of plasma and kinetic rounds tearing through space. The human supply ships at the front exploded one after another, massive fireballs that seemed to spell doom for the human fleet. But Velthar noticed something strange. The explosions were happening in a specific pattern, creating a wall of debris and radiation between the 2 fleets. Now, G1 commanded. The human warships suddenly accelerated, using the explosions as cover. They emerged from the debris cloud at impossible speeds, already firing. But they weren't trying to defeat the Calthrine fleet. They were targeting specific ships, focusing all firepower on command vessels and supply carriers. Velthar watched in horror as human fighter craft swarmed like angry insects. Yunji's squadron dove through the Calthrine formation, firing missiles and railgun rounds with precision. When one fighter ran out of ammunition, Velthar saw the pilot do exactly what Unji had described. The small craft accelerated directly into a Calthrine cruiser, smashing through its bridge section. The pilot ejected at the last second, a tiny pod tumbling through space. They're really doing it, Velthar whispered. They're actually ramming ships. Collision impact recorded, the tactical officer reported. Calthrine cruiser Vex Nar is destroyed. Pilot recovered. More human fighters followed the same tactic. When conventional weapons failed, they became weapons themselves. The Calthrine fleet began to panic, their neat formations breaking apart as they tried to avoid the suicidal attacks. On one of the auxiliary screens, Velthar saw Engineering Chief Hyunwoo's plan in action. Several human cargo ships, seemingly crippled and drifting, suddenly activated hidden engines. They positioned themselves deep within the Calthrine formation before Velthar realized what was happening. All personnel, brace for detonation, G1 announced. The cargo ships exploded. Not simple explosions, but massive antimatter detonations that created temporary suns in the darkness of space. The shockwaves ripped through the Calthrine fleet, destroying dozens of ships in seconds. More ships were crippled, their systems overloaded, their crews killed by radiation. Status report, G1 demanded. 300 Calthrine ships destroyed or disabled. We've lost 42 ships. 77 remaining combat, effective. The odds had changed. Now it was 3-1. Still in the Calthrine's favor, but no longer impossible. And Velthar could see that the Calthrine fleet was wavering. They had expected an easy victory. Instead, they faced an enemy willing to destroy themselves to take enemies with them. Special Operations reports successful boarding, another officer called out. Commander Sun Wu's teams have taken control of the Calthrine flagship. Velthar pulled up the relevant data stream. He watched in disbelief as small teams of human soldiers fought through the massive Calthrine command ship. They were outnumbered 100-1, but they moved with purpose, using explosives and close-quarters weapons to kill everyone in their path. The Calthrine crew, each one larger and stronger than any human, fell before the onslaught. Sun Wu's voice came over the tactical channel. Package secured. Calthrine command staff eliminated. Uploading their tactical data now. Simply. 1. Copy that, G1 responded. Detonate charges and evacuate. Negative, Admiral. Escape pods are damaged. We're trapped. There was a pause. Then G1 spoke, her voice tight. Understood, Commander. Thank you for your service. Honor to serve, Admiral. Sun Wu out. The Calthrine flagship exploded from within, its reactor going critical. Velthar felt his antenna droop. An entire special operations team, dozens of humans, had just died, and they had known they would die when they launched the mission. Calthrine fleet is breaking formation, sensors reported. They're retreating. Velthar watched the impossible. The massive Calthrine fleet, still outnumbering the humans 2-1, was running. Their remaining ships activated hyperdrives and fled the system in disarray. The battle was over. The human fleet didn't pursue. The ships regrouped, their hulls scarred and burning, their crews exhausted. Velthar checked the casualty reports. 71 human ships lost, thousands of crew members dead, special operations teams gone, fighter squadrons decimated. But they had won. Why did they run? Velthar asked Ki-1. The Calthrine still had superior numbers. Ki-1's face was pale, his hands shaking slightly. Because we taught them the lesson. We showed them that fighting humans isn't about numbers. It's about cost. How much are you willing to pay? Because humans will pay everything. Admiral G1's voice came over the ship-wide communication system. All hands. Stand down from combat stations. Medical teams to rescue operations. We have people out there who need us. As the crew moved to rescue survivors floating in the debris field, Velthar understood at last. Humans didn't win because they were stronger, or smarter, or better equipped. They won because they were willing to sacrifice everything. To use every tool, including their own lives, to achieve their objectives. They fought with a totality that other species couldn't comprehend. This is what the galaxy fears, Velthar said softly. Yes, Kai-1 replied. We know how to fight total war. And that's why we terrify everyone. The memorial station floated in high orbit above Earth, a simple structure made of white stone and transparent crystal. Velthar had been invited to attend the service, honoring those who fell at Titan's Gate. He almost declined. The Vryn Empire didn't hold ceremonies for their dead. Bodies were recycled, names added to databases, and life continued. But something compelled him to accept. The station's main hall was vast, its walls etched with names. Thousands upon thousands of names, stretching from floor to ceiling. Velthar learned these were every human who had died in military service over the past 200 years of space exploration. The newest names from Titan's Gate were still being added, workers carefully engraving each one into the pale stone. Human families filled the hall. Parents, children, siblings, friends. They moved quietly between the walls, touching names, leaving flowers, speaking in hushed voices to people who could no longer hear them. Velthar watched a young child place a drawing at the base of one wall, a crayon picture of a stick figure in a military uniform. The child's mother held her gently, tears running down her face. "His name was Jin Ho," a voice said beside Velthar. He turned to find Hana standing there, wearing a black formal uniform. Her eyes were red. "My brother." He was a navigation officer on the destroyer, Resolute. It took a direct hit in the first wave. "I'm sorry," Velthar said, the words feeling inadequate. "Are you?" Hana looked at him with an expression he couldn't read. "You came here to evaluate us, to determine if we're really as dangerous as the stories say. Did you find your answer?" Marfer. "Yes," Velthar admitted. "But I still don't understand why." Hana walked to one of the memorial walls, running her fingers over the engraved names. "Do you know what my brother's last transmission was?" The Resolute was breaking apart, systems failing, crew dying. Jin Ho could have abandoned ship. Instead, he stayed at his station and kept transmitting tactical data until the end. His information helped other ships avoid the same attack pattern. She turned to face Velthar, and he saw pain in her eyes, but also something else: pride. "That's what you don't understand about humans. We remember. Every name on these walls. We remember them. We know what they sacrificed. We carry that weight with us every day." Chaplain Bo-Ra began the memorial ceremony, her voice gentle but clear through the hall's acoustics. She was an older woman with white streaks in her black hair, her uniform bearing symbols of Earth's various religions. "We gather today to honor those who gave everything," she said. "We speak their names so they are not forgotten. We remember their sacrifice, so we never take peace for granted." The ceremony proceeded with each name being read aloud. All 7,423 crew members who died at Titan's Gate. It took hours. Velthar noticed that the humans never grew impatient. They listened to every single name, witnessing every single loss. During a quiet moment, Velthar found Colonel Kai-1 standing alone near a viewport. The colonel's left arm was missing below the elbow, replaced by a temporary prosthetic. He had been injured during the battle when a plasma conduit exploded on the Indomitable's command deck. "Why do you do this?" Velthar asked. "This ceremony, this remembering. Doesn't it hurt?" Kai-1 looked out at Earth, visible below them. "We force ourselves to remember that every number in a casualty report was a person with family, with dreams, with a life they'll never live." He flexed his remaining hand. Ender quowned. He flexed his remaining hand. "If we forget that, if we stop feeling the pain, then war becomes too easy." "But you won," Velthar pointed out. "The Calthrine fleet was routed. They've surrendered completely. They're paying reparations and have withdrawn from all contested territory. Other empires are offering alliance treaties. You achieved total victory. Did we?" Ki-1 gestured to the memorial walls. "Tell that to their families. Tell them we won." He shook his head. "Victory isn't what matters. Attaché. What matters is that we fought when fighting was necessary, and now we mourn because mourning is necessary. We're not proud of being good at war. We're ashamed that we had to use those skills at all." Later, Velthar was summoned to a meeting with his mentor, Elder Tharmos, via holographic communication. The ancient Vryn appeared before him, all four eyes studying Velthar carefully. Velthar chose his words carefully. "Elder, the humans are unlike any species I have studied. They are individually weak, technologically average, and numerically inferior to most galactic powers. Yet they are the most dangerous military force in known space. Explain." "They have spent their entire evolutionary history fighting themselves. They developed total war doctrines against their own species. Every weapon, every tactic, every strategy was designed to completely eliminate human opponents. When they turned those methods against the Calthrine, it wasn't even a fair fight. The Calthrene never stood a chance. Tharmos tilted his head. Yet the Calthrene had superior numbers. Numbers mean nothing to humans, Velthar said. They will sacrifice anything to achieve their objectives. Their own ships, their own lives, their own future. They fight with a completeness that other species cannot match. And Elder, there's something else. What? They're terrified of themselves. They know what they're capable of. They remember every atrocity they've committed against each other. They established rules and restrictions to limit their own violence. They mourn every death, even enemy deaths. They're the only species I know of that actively fears their own military power. Tharmos was quiet for a long moment. And this makes them more dangerous? Yes, because they won't use that power casually. They won't attack without cause. But if you give them cause, if you threaten what they protect, they will unleash everything they have without hesitation. The Calthrene made the mistake of thinking human compassion was weakness. They learned too late that human compassion is what keeps their violence in check. What is your recommendation? Velthar thought about everything he had witnessed. The protocol of goodbyes. The sacrifice of Sun Wu's special operations team. The memorial walls, covered in names. Hana crying for her brother. Permanent alliance with humanity. Support them. Trade with them. Share knowledge with them. But never, ever, give them a reason to see us as enemies. Because they would defeat us? Because they would eliminate us. Elder. Completely. Permanently. And then they would mourn us and add our names to their memorial walls and remember forever what they were forced to do. Velthar felt his antenna tremble. Humans don't just fight wars. They fight to end threats forever. That's what the galaxy fears. Rather. After the communication ended, Velthar returned to the memorial hall. The ceremony had concluded, but people still remained. Sitting quietly among the names, he found Hana kneeling before her brother's newly engraved name, a single white flower placed beneath it. Why do you keep fighting? Velthar asked her. If it hurts this much? If you lose this much? Why continue? Hana stood, wiping her eyes. Because we know what happens when good people do nothing. We studied our own history. We watched evil triumph over and over because people were too afraid to act, too comfortable to fight, too convinced that someone else would handle it. She looked at the memorial walls. Every name here represents someone who decided that some things are worth fighting for. Worth dying for. What things? The people who can't fight for themselves. The ones who just want to live in peace, raise their families, dream their dreams. My brother died so 12 million colonists could keep their homes. He knew the cost and he paid it willingly. She met Velthar's eyes. That's what makes humans different. We've stared into the darkness of our own nature. We know what monsters we can be. And we choose, every single day, to be something better. Velthar watched her walk away, rejoining her family near her brother's name. He understood now. The galaxy feared humanity not because they were violent, but because they had mastered violence and then chosen to chain it. They had the capacity for total destruction, but the wisdom to restrain it. They were predators who had learned to protect instead of hunt. As he prepared to return to his ship and file his final report, Velthar took one last look at the memorial walls. Thousands of names. Thousands of people who had paid the price for peace. And he knew that somewhere, on some distant world, someone who had never heard of humanity was living safely because humans had been willing to fight. That was the truth the galaxy needed to understand. Humans weren't to be feared because they would attack. They were to be feared because if you forced them to fight, they would do whatever was necessary to protect the innocent. And nothing in the universe was more dangerous than someone fighting to protect others. Velthar's final report would be simple. Form alliance with humanity. Support them. Honor them. And pray you never give them reason to treat you the way they once treated each other. Because the galaxy had finally learned what humans had known for centuries. The most dangerous warriors are not those who love fighting, but those who understand its true cost and fight anyway.